Hello everyone. So I'm making this video to talk about the concept of caring. Now, in general, caring is seen as a good thing, but a lot of kind of spiritual gurus, they almost make it appear as a bad thing, like attachment or this idea that one should not care, one should just live in the present, or I don't know, be kind of dissociated from the reality, dissociated from the world, um, live in some kind of desensitized anesthesia state. I already made a video where I discuss about, in my opinion, how stupid this idea of non-attachment is, because the real attachment is the attachment to stories, to mental conditionings, especially the attachment related to stories about identity. So the idea that, for example, you're going to renounce material stuff, but you only do it because you build a story in your mind, about your identity. So about how great you are or generous you are, how non-attached you are, so you are above others, you are better, you are more spiritual, whatever. So in reality, the non-attachment to material stuff, whatever that means, just becomes an extremely strong attachment to a story about identity. Now, if someone likes to give away stuff, why not? But I will argue, unless there is a purpose in giving, in abandoning something, in getting rid of something, then there is a story. I mean, there is a story anyway, but the question is, let's say you give something to help someone specifically because you want to help them, then it's a preference, it's a direct preference. You want to help that person, you care about them, you give them some money. But if you just burn your money as a kind of statement, then what is the reason? Because it's not that you believe that you're not giving away your money because you believe something useful is going to happen with it, which could be a direct preference. You are willing to spend your money to have something specific happen, to be sure that someone is helped, someone is taken care of. So you have a purpose, and the purpose doesn't have to be a story. You may truly care about the person. Caring is not a story. Now, of course, there could also be a story, but we are going to look at this. So, but what I'm trying to say is that if you just say, I'm going to abandon everything I have because I don't care, then it's probably a story. Because why do you feel the need to do the kind of the effort to abandon stuff, to throw away stuff? Because either it's about you give to someone because there is an intention to help someone, and then you give because the intention is to help, or if the intention is just to throw away, to get rid of, if the intention is just non-attachment, in reality you are attached to the idea that you are a non-attachment kind of guy. So you're now attached to a story about your identity, and it's much worse, because better to be attached to stuff than to stories. Better be greedy and be attached to having a lot of money than be attached to some story in your mind that you are better than everyone else because you're non-attached to material stuff. So we have to be very careful about this. Unfortunately, a lot of those spiritual gurus, they often mislead people into some kind of bullshit. So, and I think, I wouldn't say it's easy always to notice, but in general, I think you can tell if whatever someone is telling you, like some spiritual guru or whatever, if it's about building a new belief, building a new story on top of the current stories, or it's about questioning an assumption, questioning a story in order to break it down and so that it can fall. Breaking down stories, so destroying them, let's say, realizing that they are just stories, realizing that the story is just a story, that's very helpful. So pointing out that something is wrong in what we believe, questioning our belief, that's very useful in general. Well, I would say probably all the time. It's what a critical mind should do. question beliefs and drop them. If they are just conditioning, if they are based on nothing, drop the belief. But when it's about adding a new belief, like you should do like this, you should be non-attached. But why you should be non-attached? It's a new story. So now you're going to be attached to the idea that you're the kind of guy that is non-attached and you are spiritually superior. That's much worse. At least if you were greedy because you love to have a lot of money, it's a direct preference. You just love to have lots of money and you're greedy. But you're not telling yourself a story. At least you're being honest with yourself. You're greedy. So what? At least you're not lying to yourself. You're greedy. There is nothing wrong with being greedy. Some people prefer to be generous. Others prefer to be greedy. There is really no difference. It's really about, because either it's about your preference or you're telling yourself a story. So if you like to be generous, be generous. But it doesn't make you better than anyone else. You're just generous because you like to be generous. And if you like to be greedy, that doesn't make you worse than someone else. You're just greedy because you like to be greedy. So generous or greedy is just a preference. You're acting on your direct preference. But now if you build yourself a story that it's better to be generous and that you have to be generous and you're the most generous of everyone, and to prove it to everyone and yourself, you're going to give away everything you have to prove your own attachment. You're just getting attached to the idea that you're generous and that you're better than everyone else because you're generous. It's not about being generous anymore. It's about the story you're telling yourself. You're building a new fake identity. So there is nothing wrong with caring. You can care about things, about yourself, about people, or you cannot care. It's a preference. If you care, it's great. If you don't care, it's also great. No one is asking you to either care or not care. But some spiritual teachers will start to tell you, well, spiritual gurus, will start to tell you that you should care about certain things, you should not care about other things. So you should be attached to certain things, non-attached to other things. Usually the idea that you should be non-attached kind of become the idea that you should not care. So you should just live in the present moment. You should just focus on having a quiet mind. This idea that you should not care, that things around you are a distraction. But a distraction from what? From some bullshit story that you have to live in the present and you have to have a quiet mind, because that's the story. That's the new story. So they are telling you that you should not care about anything that is happening. That is, you should force yourself to not follow your preferences, to go for a bullshit story. The bullshit story that you should do certain things. You should live in the present. You should be non-attached. You should have a quiet mind. So you now become attached to those ideas. You think it's important. You build a story that you should do all those things, that you should not care about most things or maybe everything. That makes you more spiritual, more holy. What does that even mean? More spiritual, more holy. It's like if someone tells you something like this is going to make you more spiritual, more holy, again, they are just adding a story. What does that mean? More spiritual. I mean, so let's say someone believes we are spiritual beings, whatever that means. I mean, either you are or you're not. It's not that, it's like if I am me, it's not that I can be more me or less me. I am just me. So if we are spiritual, whatever that means, it's not going to change based on what we do. So why do we need to build another story? And usually those stories that those spiritual gurus they provide, they push toward the idea of anesthesia, some kind of separation with reality, to kind of really disconnect from reality. So yeah, reality is fake, is an illusion. The only thing that is true is the bullshit story that I'm giving you. So just meditate and just have a quiet mind and just live in the present. Just desensitize yourself to anything. Become completely anesthetized. So like an anesthesia, like Don't feel anything. Don't just separate yourself. Just dissociate yourself. Just focus on the new bullshit story. But that's not going to bring you to anything. It's just a new story, a new Santa Claus, a new belief. Why want us to have a quiet mind? What's the benefit? I mean, it's probably better to be able to think and to actually question things, to have a mind to question, to have critical sense, to question the bullshit ideas and beliefs that are imposed on us. Every time something tells you that you should something, it's probably bullshit story. I mean, maybe not always, but the best you can do is to think about it and criticize, and try to criticize it from all angles, and see is it something useful or it's not. Is it yet a new story, yet a new illusion, yet a new story that I'm going to put between me and reality? Usually yes, because usually it's about removing stories. Truth is not about discovering some hypothetical, secret, mysterious truth. I will make a video about that, but I mean, I can even explain it now. But truth, what is truth? I mean, truth is just describing reality. It's just this. So there is reality, and we describe it. So either we describe reality in a truthful way or not. No one can know what is, let's say, the absolute. Absolute will mean, let's say, the ultimate reality. So, I mean, maybe we are in a simulation, maybe it's a dream, maybe it's a simulation within a dream. No one has any idea, because even when you are dreaming, you don't know until you wake up. So you only realize when you woke up. But what if you wake up again? Then you realize it was a dream. And then what if you remove your Googles and it turned out it was all a big simulation? No one really knows what is the ultimate reality, whatever that means. So the ultimate reality will be the thing that you cannot escape from. So you escape from a dream, and then you escape from a simulation, and then at some point you're in some place where you cannot escape. So that will be the ultimate reality, but no one has any idea what it is. So it's stupid to talk about truth. It's like if you are in a dream, you cannot describe the world. It's like you only know your dream. Now, I'm not saying we are in a dream, but the thing is, ultimate truth would mean knowing everything. So you will have to know absolutely everything. But no one knows everything. We are just some guys on a small planet in a minor solar system, in a minor galaxy. How can we know everything? So talking about truth as if someone has some absolute truth is just nonsense. So the best we can do in terms of finding truth is just removing what is bullshit. The process of finding truth is just removing the bullshit. And eventually you're left with whatever you're left, but you're certainly left with a lot of doubt. No one knows, let's say, is there life after death or not? We have no idea. And does it really make sense to speculate? I mean, maybe yes, maybe not. We will find out eventually. But who cares? So if we cannot even answer such a simple question, how can any spiritual guru have all the answers and pretend to provide the truth? No one has any idea. Reality is huge. It's very complex. And we are only a speck of dust in the universe. How can we know everything? Because knowing the truth in a positive way will basically mean knowing everything. Because even if you're missing a part, then it's kind of incomplete truth. So to know the truth, if you intend the truth in a positive way, then you have to know everything. As animals on a small planet, in a minor solar system, in a minor galaxy, in a gigantic universe, it's really ridiculous, the idea that we can know everything. So if there is such a truth, such an absolute truth, if there is, which would be knowing everything, certainly we have no access to it. So the best we can do is remove what is false. Just like the 6-year-old, let's say a kid that is 6 years old, he will probably not understand nuclear physics. But at least he can understand that Santa Claus doesn't exist. He doesn't have to aim, at 6 years old, he doesn't have to aim at understanding the laws of physics and relativity and whatever. It's too complicated. So no point trying to understand the absolute truth. But he can realize that Santa Claus doesn't exist. He can remove what is obviously false. So again, back to caring, even if I'm mixing up topics a little bit, but hopefully that can be useful. Caring is a preference. Some people can care, some cannot care. But it almost gets like a bad rap. It's bad to care, it means you're attached. No, it's a preference. And what does attachment means anyway? You're attached. I mean, aren't you attached to your money? If you're not attached, just throw it away. Aren't you attached to your health? Probably you kind of care about your health. If you're sick, you go to the hospital. Of course, you're attached to things that make your life better. It makes perfect sense. Now, of course, then there is the case where someone loses something or someone and they feel bad about it. But that's a different story. It's not about being non-attached. This is more about acceptance. And acceptance is really about non-judgment. So let's say you're attached to a person, or you're attached to, let's say, money, and you lose the person or you lose the money. Well, what can you do? I mean, you may experience pain, yes. But the difference is if you tell yourself a story that this is wrong, this shouldn't have happened. So you compare the reality with your story and you judge. And this is the source of suffering, is the judgment. So the pain, you will feel either way, but there is nothing wrong with it. You need some feeling. I mean, of course you can choose to anesthetize yourself and live in a kind of anesthetized world. And maybe for some people, they can feel that it's a good idea, because if they are always in constant suffering, that's why maybe this idea of quiet mind can be appealing to some people. Because if they have constantly like negative thoughts and they're always suffering, then it can feel like a temporary relief to just quiet those thoughts. But it's more like if you break your leg, yes, you want the anesthesia, but then you don't want to be under anesthesia for the rest of your life. So if someone has those negative thoughts, the solution is not to have no thoughts, is to realize that the reason, the root cause why they have those negative thoughts is because of the stories they have in their head, the mental conditionings, and to realize that those are just stories, and then they drop. And then there is no more bad thought or whatever, like judgments. But you don't need to live an anesthetized life. You can live a fully engaged life that is with full emotion. And sometimes you will experience pain, and sometimes you will experience joy. But you will not judge it. So it's the first dart in Buddhism. No one can avoid pain. If you break your leg, you will always feel pain. Everyone will feel pain. The difference is that some people will add suffering on top of it. So they will say, it shouldn't have happened. Why me? I don't deserve it. It's wrong that I broke my leg. That's the suffering. And it's based on many beliefs that I talk about in those videos. And those beliefs are based on stories. So we believe in stories like should. I made a video about this one. So we believe in those stories, and all we have to do is drop the stories. There is no need to be anesthetized. There is no need to be non-attached, to not care. It's perfectly fine to care, but it's also perfectly fine not to care. It's perfectly fine to be attached, and it's also perfectly fine not to be attached. Of course, there are things that you care about, and you rather not lose them. But if you lose them, yeah, you will experience some pain for a while. But what makes that pain really bad is the story that it shouldn't have happened, or that something is wrong about it. It just happened. The alternative is to live in a completely anesthetized state, but who wants to live like that? Why should you judge? Because in some way, when you anesthetize yourself, all you're really doing is you're living in a story. So let's say you have stories in your mind that make you feel suffering because you always judge reality. Now, the ideal solution would be to remove those stories so they are gone. But unfortunately, what most spiritual teachers give is a new story that kind of go on top of the other stories and try to cover them, trying to cover the suffering of the other stories. And that new story become kind of like a monopoly. It kind of monopolizes the other story. It's a very strong story. And so it covers the other story. And it's the story of anesthetization, the story that you are better than everyone else or whatever. You are more spiritual. You should not be attached. You should not care. You should live in the present. Basically, pure anesthetization. Just quiet your mind. Live in the present. Ignore everything around you. It's a new story about anesthetization. And it can work for a little bit of time. Maybe for a long time. But you become completely anesthetized. Instead of removing the stories, you add new stories. So if you care, keep caring. If you don't care, keep don't caring. But don't make up a story that you should care or you should not care, that you should be attached or you should not be attached, or that you should think in a certain way, your mind should work in a certain way. The point is to drop the stories and to finally experience reality without the stories, not to add a new story where you anesthetize yourself to kind of cover the other stories.